right side to the 10, to the 5, touchdown! 6, going to the hoop, puts it up, puts it in! A fantastic play.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the inaugural episode of Magnolia Fields. I'm Tanner Marlar. He's Cody Blaszszak. And this is going to be your one-stop shop for everything Mississippi high school athletics, especially in the Max Out Sports Network coverage area.
70-something schools, a lot of football, well, a lot of sports, I should say, coming our way. I mean, yeah, first episode, it's always fun to start new things, and the coverage area, I mean, my Lord, it's a lot.
Gosh.
We got a lot of stuff to talk about in the coming year.
I always say we are right here nestled in the hotbed of high school sports in Mississippi. Nobody does it better than the people and the schools and the wonderful programs in this area. And now look, we've got this beautiful studio and this beautiful set and these two beautiful faces and these silky smooth voices to talk about all of it. We're going to get into, in just a moment, our football season previews. We're going to be previewing all 70-plus schools in our coverage area for this season. We don't just stop with football either, Cody. We're bringing basketball. We're going to bring baseball in. Not only that, we're not just going to talk high school. We're going to talk Mississippi State. We're going to talk Ole Miss. We have got a whole breadth of shows.
Do we really want to talk Ole Miss, though?
We don't.
No, we don't. But there will be some Ole Miss coverage. Let's clear that up.
Yeah, Brad Logan and Frank Dodds will be doing a fantastic job talking all things Rebs. You're going to be here with me and Cody, though, for all things high school and all things Mississippi State.
And you talked about the beautiful set that we get. Beautiful logo, too.
Beautiful logo.
It's incredible.
It's beautiful.
On top of the fact, if you missed the intro, go back and rewatch it.
Exactly.
It's killer.
That's the thing. This is going to be on every audio platform. You're going to be able to watch this actual broadcast live, not live, but at least like you're here, like you're in a third chair with us online. It's going to be great.
Yeah, we've got a lot of fun coming our way, a lot of sports, a lot of, maybe not a lot, but a little bit of goofing around, having a good time.
A lot.
There's big cup of pins.
Yeah, there's a big cup of pins. I need to put in a graphic count of how many pins we're going to throw at each other this season. We need to do that. We definitely need to do that.
Could be a lot, could be little.
Yeah. A little bit about us. We've been doing this together for, 3-4 years now?
It's been a while.
This is the first time someone has had the guts to stick cameras in front of us, though. And that is impressive. Hats off to you guys in the studio for that.
Yeah, that's
a big step.
Big step, and yeah, we'll see how it goes.
We'll see. We'll see if we have a job next week. We'll find out. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and dive in because we have got so many schools to talk about. Let's hop into 1A. We're going to start off first of the season, first of the show's history. Ashland Middle High School. I've got them at 4-7 on the year. Didn't have a great year last year. They lost by, I think, 52 to Walnut at the start of last season. And the reason I've got that one circled as a big game for them to open the season on August 30th is I think they can use that as kind of a barometer for how their season could go. If they can make that game closer, cut that down to 20, cut that down to 15. I think you can go into that next week on into your non-division slate, carry some momentum into your divisional slate, knowing, hey, we are better than last year. We can make a push.
Yeah. Another thing to recognize about some of these 1A schools, too, is you get your region games that are against other 1A schools, but those non-region games, a lot of times, are against higher competition, which is why you're going to see some of these rough records. Just because they're not great records doesn't mean they're bad teams. It just...
They're playing up.
They're playing up. They have to. They really don't have a choice. Yeah, you can schedule some other 1A schools that aren't in your region. You might see them again in the playoffs too, but a lot of times they'll stick to their area and schedule some of those games, and it just becomes tough, which is why, 4-7 isn't a great record, but 3-8 last year got them to the playoffs.
Exactly.
So it just depends. And fun fact, too, they actually travel out of state this season for a midseason matchup in Tennessee against a school called Middleton.
Yeah, Middleton. And Middleton, not a great program. I'm from Corinth, which is pretty close to Middleton. Not a great program. Usually some folks will schedule them for an easy win. And we'll talk a little bit about somebody who didn't schedule them again this year later on in this same episode. But, yeah, I think Ashland, 4-7 is a good prediction for them this year. If they can break that and, find 5 wins, excellent.
We'll see where it goes. Just tough situation as 1A school.
Absolutely. Moving on to Coffeyville. And I want to address the camera on this one to act like I'm talking to coaches if you're watching this. Coffeyville only has 7 games listed on their max preps and on SB Live. And most of the time, teams play 10 before getting to the postseason. We can only talk about these 7 games. So that's for that reason, we've got the predicted 2-5. Did not have a great year last year. I don't really have any big games for them this year because, again, the schedule's not really complete.
Yeah, this is a school that went 0-9 last year. This is a school that lost every game by double digits. So a tough go last season, and you want to come. You can't get much worse than that. Let's put it that way. So you come back, new season, you have an opportunity to improve, and that's what they need to do.
Yeah, I think they've got a little bit easier non-divisional schedule this year as well. So
take what you can get. Yeah, try and get some wins in the win column.
Yeah, take what you can get. On into Ethel. First team of the episode we've got picked above 500. I've got them at 8-2. They have got a big game on October the 25th, which is going to be a theme throughout these next couple weeks. That 18 to 25 window is insane. But they've got a big game against Nanih, who I think is almost just right on the cusp of being all the way back in 1A football. But if Ethel can pull that one out, there's no telling how deep they can go unless they run into a buzzsaw in the playoffs. The thing is, last year they get into the first round and they lost to Lumberton 33-0. Got skunked.
Yeah, getting shut out is tough. They had a really solid regular season last year. It's just that's not getting into the playoffs. Great. Not competing in the playoffs is an issue, and that's essentially what happened. When you get shut out, it just can't happen. You got to do something.
Yeah, you got to find a way to at least make that first round matchup competitive. On into Faulkner, somebody who is always competitive at this level. I've got them at 9-1. They've got a big non-divisional game as they jump up on September the 13th and will play Alcorn Central. I think that's a very winnable game for Faulkner and jumping up 2 levels essentially. Alcorn Central obviously being a 3A. Last year they ran into Smithville in round 1, and a lot of that speed from Smithville kind of bested them. If they can either A, avoid Smithville in round 1 this year, or manage to beat them, control the clock, control time of possession, limit the big plays, Faulkner could make a pretty good run again this year.
Yeah, and some of these schools that we see that lost in that first round they're almost there. They just need a little bit more help to get there. So it becomes tough. And yeah, like you said, you avoid Smithville, that's a good thing. But if you get Smithville back, just a little bit more might get you over the hump and put you into that next round. And hey, one win can do a lot for a team.
Yeah, that can really galvanize your squad.
So it really depends on what the mindset is going into that game. And you make it to the playoffs, especially with a 8-3 record like you did last year, or technically 8-2 in the regular season. You've got a good team. You don't win 8 games by luck.
No, you don't luck into an 8-win season. You've got a good football team. You just got to be able to put all the pieces together when it really matters in that third season, the third season within the season. Obviously, we talk about you've got your non-divisional slate, your divisional slate, and then the postseason. 3 seasons within one high school football season. On into McAdams. Now, McAdams did not have a good year last year. They went 1-9. I've got them going 1-9 again this year because they have not yet shown me that they're going to be that 10% better. You're going to hear us throughout a lot of the endurance of this show talk about getting 10% better each year, because typically in a high school football season, you're going to play 10 games. You got to find a way to win at least one more game than you did last year to show improvement.
Yeah, and a lot of these teams will have that extra 10%, for example, by losing a game by 7 points or whatever it may be, 3 points, 1 point, a possession, let's put it that way. That extra 10% is the difference sometimes. And
can you get a touchdown a game better than you were last year?
And that's a lot. I mean,
that's a lot.
Over a 10-game season, that's 70 points. That's a big difference.
Exactly. And we're going to get into some schools here in a minute that really could have used that 70 points. And when we do the math, think about how much it would have changed their season. So McAdams, I've got them again 1-9. Moving on into Myrtle. Big game for them, October the 25th, again, against Faulkner. That's when a lot of these teams get in this divisional mode, that mid-October range, and the action really picks up. I've got Myrtle at 3-7, a tough non-divisional schedule. They're going to play 2 3A teams in Alcorn Central and Belmont. Now, neither of those are 3A powerhouses, but here in the early non-divisional slate, a lot of times what we see with these 1A teams, they don't have the depth required to really stick it out for 4 quarters against these teams that can have more guys playing one way, whereas these 1A schools have a bunch of 2-way players.
Well, heck, you were on one of those teams, were you not?
I was on 3A. Yeah, we played 3A, and I only played on the defensive side of the ball.
You had some guys that played.
Yeah, we had a few guys that would play both, but more times than not, especially on the offensive and defensive lines, you didn't play both ways.
It's tough with these 1A schools. I mean, you don't get a whole lot of players to begin with, so you got to make do with what you have, and
it's a grind.
It is. I mean, you talk about these guys on 7A schools, for example, who are tired at the end of games, which they are. Don't get me wrong.
They absolutely are. But they've only
played. Imagine if you played both ways.
Yeah, they've only played half the snaps.
Yeah.
They've only played half the snaps in that game. And again, here on the Magnolia Field Show, we will have coaches on throughout the season, and I would love to get some of these 1A coaches on to talk about, what's that kind of mid-season practice like, because health of these players becomes a real concern when you don't have that kind of bench depth. Are you limiting practice to shorts and T-shirt 2 times a week? What is your regimen like to keep these guys healthy so you've got them available for Friday nights?
Yeah, I imagine it does get a little somewhat easier just because of the health of these players, but I've not really thought about it until, I don't know, what you just said made me think of it, though. You have to guess. These guys are in some incredible shape to be playing both ways in every snap.
I mean, that helps and hurts you at some positions, because on the offensive line, how can you get a guy to the weight that he needs to be? When you're wanting a guy that's 250, how can you keep him at 250 when he's losing 20 pounds of sweat every week? I mean, it's tough, and we're definitely going to get some coaches on, talk about some stuff like that. On into Nanih. Cody, 1A football is better when Nanih is good, and they are so close to being all the way back. Right now, I've got them at 5-5 on the season. They have got a lot of tough non-divisional games, but last year they lost a bunch of divisional games by less than 10 points.
This is a team that just kind of had a rough go at it last season. They went 3-7, 2-3 in a region. So,
and it's arguably the toughest 1A region in the state.
Yeah, not only is it a tough region, but as you can see from the record, they schedule tough games as well. 3-7, 1 non-region game, and then you had 4 non-region losses, and then that 2-3 region record. They make life hard on themselves with that non-region, which it has some pros and cons to it. Probably helps you get better, but record doesn't look great at the end of the season. But like you said, they're getting there. You think they'll make that push to 2 extra wins this season to put them at 5-5, where they were 3-7 last year. So maybe they make it to the playoffs or weren't able to get there last year. So 5-5, depending on that region schedule, might push them into that first round.
Yeah, and again, that is a program with such rich tradition. I'm always excited to see Nanih play. Their big game against Noxapater for me going to be played on October the 10th. Hoping personally that Nanih is back this year, because 1A football is just more fun when they are. It just is.
If it's not this year, it feels like they're trending in the right direction. So let's not say, I'm not going to say they're back this year, but like you said, feels like they're going that way. maybe the year after you start looking at 7 wins, 6 or 7, and then you can really start talking about they're getting back.
They absolutely are. On into Potts Camp. They've got a big game this year, and you're going to hear me say this team's name a lot as this episode progresses. October the 4th against Biggersville, last year's 1A state champions. And we cannot overstate how much of a buzzsaw Biggersville was in 1A last year. I mean, it was impressive.
Yeah, they're a team that just they did what they do, and they were impressive. I mean, just all across the board, it was tough to beat them. And you look at we were on Potts Camp real quick, going back to it. They were 8-5 last year, so a good team. They lost in that second round to West Lowens, but even if you get through that second round, like you said, Biggersville, that's not an easy game.
Not at all.
I mean, so there are some powerhouses throughout conferences that are beatable and some that just aren't beatable. And we'll talk about some of those schools down the road. Just for the sake of it, Louisville happens to be one of those that it isn't just a powerhouse in 4A, but is a powerhouse in the entire state. And for 1A, it happens to be Biggersville. And sometimes you can throw everything you got at them. Sometimes there's a team that's just better.
Yeah, sometimes there's teams that catch the kitchen sink and throw it back at you. That's Biggersville. Potts Camp, though, going to be a good football team. I think I've got them at 7-5 this year. Not a bad team. Going to make for a good 1A showing, but unfortunately, I think they run into that buzzsaw again.
Yeah, they're another. They'll I would guess make the playoffs. It's just how far do they get in the playoffs, and depending on how far they get, when do they face Biggersville?
Absolutely. Talking about the former buzzsaw of 1A next in Smithville. For a lot of years, Biggersville was right on the cusp of being that team until they ran into Smithville in the playoffs. Smithville, you look at their record from last season, not pretty, but managed to win a playoff game. You know, they're one of those 1A teams that schedules way above their weight in that non-divisional slate. So the record usually doesn't look pretty, but when division rolls around and then when postseason rolls around, you're playing a battle-tested team.
Yeah, like you said, not pretty last year, 3-9. However, that record does not matter if you make it to the playoffs, which they did. They won their first round matchup, couldn't handle Baldwin in the second round, but I mean, there's a team that we went over, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but had a 7-3 season, didn't make the playoffs. I'll take 3-9 if I'm making the playoffs.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what matters.
Yeah, I think that was Scott Central up in 3-4,
yeah,
which we'll talk about in a later episode, obviously. But like you said, that third season is the one that matters. Really, the last two.
Yeah, just you have to do enough to get into the playoffs, but I don't care if I lose all my non-region games if I make the playoffs and have an opportunity to make a run. And if that's the philosophy Smithville uses, I'm on board with it.
Hey, by all means. They're always going to have speed around the edges. They're always going to have great athletes over at Smithville. I think they are gearing up for what could be another playoff push, but we'll see. On into the local boys. Obviously, the Max South Sports Network studio right here in beautiful Stark Vegas, Starkville Academy. I've got them at 8-2 this year. They do not play a lot of good football teams, and that really kind of group doesn't play a lot of good football, period. But they're good at playing bad football. Starkville Academy is. I'm not sure if that's
bad or is it mediocre. Maybe right in between that bad. And
they
mediocre.
are very good at private school football.
And I know what bad private school football is.
That you do. They are good at private school football. I've got them at 8-2 this year. I think they're going to make another pretty good run at it. Big game for them, again, in that 18-25 window on October 25th against Magnolia Heights.
Yeah, this is a team that, like you said, good record, really good record, actually. 9-3, went undefeated in region play, but that first round came, and Simpson Academy said it's time to end your season.
It's time to go home. It's time to pack them up. Head on home. On to Thrasher. And I think this is our first winless pick. Had one win last season to Middleton. Did not schedule Middleton again this year.
Yeah, and maybe they get a game canceled and get lucky and schedule them. I don't know. It's just a tough season.
Maybe they accidentally win a game.
I mean, it's possible.
Any weirder things have happened.
You talk about that 10%. Maybe somehow they get 10% better and pull a win out.
Hey,
maybe it's luck too.
I hope the Thrasher Rebels prove me wrong. But right now I've got them at 0-10.
Yeah, it looks to be a tough season.
It's hard to win football games in Thrasher.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's not a huge talent pool for baseball. Sure, they've put together some good baseball teams over the years. It's tough to win a lot of football games in Thrasher. It is. When you're surrounded and you're 10 minutes down the road from Biggersville and Ryanzi and all that,
which is a pretty big reason on why you look at that record or a predicted record and it's sitting at 0-10.
A goose egg in the W column. So hopefully they prove us wrong. We will wait and see. On into Tupelo Christian, 8-2 last year, or 8-2 this year, excuse me. Did have a good season last year. However, got skunked to Biggersville 45-0. They get a rematch on the 18th of October. And again, I don't think you have to beat them. I think you just got to make it closer than last year.
Yeah, if you can show some improvement, that's the biggest thing. And you talk about, I think playing some of these powerhouses in the regular season is a good thing because you have that opportunity in the postseason to meet them again. And whether you win or lose in the regular season, it really doesn't matter. What matters is that playoff matchup. But what you can do is pick up some tips, find ways to improve whether you win or lose that regular season matchup. And something they might need to do. They did make it to the second round, lost to Vardaman, which we'll get to after this. That's another school that pretty tough school to beat, especially in 1A.
Not pretty tough. Really tough. Really tough. But yeah, Tupelo Christian, I've got them 8-2. I think they lose that one to Biggersville and pick up one more throughout the year. Still a great season for them. They're going to be formidable. They're going to be a good team. I just don't think they're going to be a great team. On into, though, what I do think is going to be a great team in Vardaman. Cody, do you like the 1980s?
I think it has some pros to it.
Like what?
Like, I think we're going to talk football, so I'll say football.
Well, football, definitely. Poison, the band, not the Venom. Great movies and the wing tee offense. I
think the wing tee might be my favorite.
It is Vardaman's favorite. I mean, it is a lot of ground and pound, a lot of running. And in Vardaman, it is just cornbread-fed, large dudes lining up to run a football for 5 yards of play. And if you get 5 yards on every play, Cody, usually you win football games.
That is the case. And, hey, it did it for him last year.
It did it for him last year. For that reason, I've got them. It didn't do enough. They ran into the Biggersville buzzsaw.
Yeah, you look at Vardaman, who had a perfect regular season.
I think they have a perfect one again this year.
They made it to the fourth round. And like you said, they lost to Biggersville. And sometimes there's just a giant that you can't slay yet. It's still their time. And at the moment, that is the case for Biggersville. I mean, and it's tough for a team like Vardaman, too. I mean, going undefeated and then just that one loss, it's tough.
Yeah, and didn't just just get hammered against Biggersville like the rest of the playoffs teams they met did. Biggersville is not in the Max South coverage area, but we keep talking about it. But just to give people a window into how good they were, their scores in at least what appears to be playoffs and state tournament football. They beat West Lowndes 42-8. They beat Vardaman 41-21 and beat Velma 53-49. In their division, they beat Tupelo Christian 45-0, Baldwin 35-14. Baldwin, by the way, was a bump down from 2A. That is usually a 2A team, and they got bumped down into the 1A bracket for that year. So, look, Biggersville was able to handle business there. Beat Thrasher 55-8. How do you go home after that?
It's tough. I mean,
55-8. Hopped on the bus, drove 15 minutes back home. Beat Okolona, who was a very good 1A team, 49-8. And then obviously we read the other scores, but yeah.
Now, a giant.
When I tell you a buzzsaw last year, that's what Biggersville was. And they lost. a lot of production. They lost their quarterback. They lost a great running back. Brooks Seago is still back. He's a fantastic wide receiver. I believe he'll be going into his junior season. They're going to have to replace a lot of production, but overall it was a very young team. It was very top-heavy with talent, and those are all gone. It's going to be tough to replace, but I think the ingredients are there for Biggersville to repeat.
I think it's possible. One thing is it's tough to repeat.
It's tough to repeat in 1A, period.
Yeah, and they have a chance, yes. They also played some
really good teams.
Yeah, some really good teams down the stretch, and it feels like it might be Biggersville's year again, but you got some teams that are coming for them. I mean, they've had their stretch. You wonder if I'm Vardaman, I'll put it this way. I went undefeated. I've got a chip on my shoulder to beat y'all next year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Biggersville has the target on their back by far. That's a definite. It's just a question of can anybody hit it? Is anybody going to hit it? That is
the question, yeah. Who can get the job done if anyone can get the job done?
If anyone. That is going to wrap up the 1A list. However, I can't reiterate enough that we are so excited to be here on this new show with this new platform, with this fantastic crew here in this fantastic studio, getting to talk sports.
That's always fun. Like you said, sports. To start things off, we've had the opportunity to do it for a couple of years, and we're back at it. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
I wouldn't have thought.
They thought we retired.
We did not. Maybe we did retire and came out of retirement.
I feel like MJ. I don't know
if we can compare ourselves with MJ.
I'm going to draft up the letterhead. I'm going to draft it up. The I'm back.
You're back?
The I'm back.
We're back.
We're back. We, us, back. Totally.
Said by a famous QB quarterback, or Texas quarterback.
That is.
And they were, in fact, not back.
They're still not back. But we'll get into that on the Mississippi State episode. That's about all the time we've got for this inaugural episode. As always, thanks for joining in. Thanks for listening. Thanks for throwing the pen at me, Cody. We got that one out of the way.
Texas is back. I don't know what you're talking about.
We'll see. This has been the Magnolia Field Show. We'll catch you next time for our 2A preview